You're listening to Kizuki, the podcast. I'm Mae Yoshikawa, and I define the Japanese concept of Kizuki as the following. Kizuki. 1. A moment of epiphany, an aha of realization or insight which opens the knower to a new dimension of truth that was formerly unknown. 2. Steps in an incremental growth of awareness, resulting in a movement from ignorance to greater awareness of the bigger picture. A kind of knowing that cannot be undone, that cannot be unrealized. As a longtime yoga and meditation practitioner, a world traveler and curious self-explorer, I'm obsessed with Kizukis. Listen on each week for inspiring and enlightening stories that may just tip you over for your next aha. On this week's episode, Healing Generational Trauma. Have you ever heard of this phrase by the spiritual teacher, the late Ram Dass, who said, "If you think you're so enlightened, go and spend a week with your parents." Now, chuckle. That one's definitely left an impression on me because, well, when you're practicing yoga, meditation, mindfulness, and looking at, how do we put this? All the crap that comes up in your psyche, you begin to notice generational patterns and cyclical issues that come up. Or let's say you begin to notice that many of the issues that you're dealing with currently in your life didn't just start with you. It actually started with your mom or your pops or your grandparents or your ancestors, your entire lineage perhaps. And that it's like an undercurrent, a culture being painted towards pain or towards addiction or towards running away and neglecting and things like that. Whatever the issue is, chances are it didn't just start yesterday, right? So naturally, of course, in my years of practice, I've noticed many such things. When I think about, for example, my tendency towards perfectionism, I used to think that it was about me and that I had, this issue about it. But as I step back and look at it, I realized that, maybe my dad had bits and pieces of it, or maybe my sister also does. And so the issue in and of itself is not so new. In the same way, I used to be huge on worrying because I was huge on overthinking. And then I started yoga and I started meditation. And as I would sit in meditation, I would notice that, I'm worrying again. And then I started wondering, why am I always leaning towards worry? And then one day I visited my grandma. She likes strawberries. And I took her 2 packs of these beautiful Japanese bright red strawberries. And I was visiting with a couple others of my cousins. And my grandma was like, "Oh, thank you. Such beautiful strawberries. Thank you so much. Arigato." And the next thing she said was, "But do we have enough? Is this going to be enough for everyone?" Like, oh my God, she's like the origin, the mega godmother of worry. Okay, you can give her like the perfect anything and she would worry about it. So it dawned upon me, this Kizuki, that, oh crap, it's not as lightweight, it's not as easy as I thought. And at the same time, when you can recognize that the problem didn't stem from you, it actually takes the weight off of it so much because you're like, oh my God, I thought this was my problem. And there's a possessiveness to it. Like it's my problem the whole time. And then you step back and you're like, oh, wait a second. This came from other people in my family, and oh, maybe it's not personally just my fault. So you start to peel off these layers of unnecessary ownership with the issue. So as you build an awareness, you can catch these patterns playing out in you. And as you catch them, you release them not only like it was your own, but you release them like it was something perhaps that was carried on generationally in your lineage. And so many, many years of such practices have helped me to realize that healing myself also helps to heal my lineage and even my ancestors. So I wholly am one who believes that any kind of healing and coming to awareness and greater consciousness that I do in my current life is something that even my parents or my grandparents and my ancestors might be thankful for, because perhaps it was something that they couldn't complete in their lifetime. So anyway, this past weekend, as I was reflecting on such things, because, oh, I don't know, my family's going through a lot of stuff, I had a text message from my nephew who lives abroad, and he said, oh, he's in Tokyo for a short time and he would like to get together with the cousins. So at first it was just going to be him, who is 25 now. His birth was the same day that I became an auntie for the first time, and I was 19 at the time. And so it was going to be him and my other sister's son, who's 18, and then my older son, Isa, who's 15, and they were going to go to the park and shoot some hoops. And I wasn't planning on joining them at all, but I woke up in the morning and I just suddenly felt like, oh, maybe I'll take Aiden, the little one, the 6-year-old, and we'll go and watch the older kids play basketball just for fun. So that's what I did, and it was just so divine, so simple yet divine. And as I watched these boys, so grown and so in between boyhood and manhood, and oh, well, maybe the oldest is a young man, but and then the other teenage boys kind of looking up to him and learning from him, and it's stimulating to have an older cousin that way. I saw, just from observation, that these boys, these young men, are growing into their own. And they are, and they will be more and more, thinking and making decisions and taking responsibility of their own lives. And they too will be realizing things and healing things, perhaps that my generation, me and my siblings, have yet left incomplete. And so suddenly, as I was just sitting down on the side staircase watching these kids, the youngest, my Aiden, being 6 years old, and my oldest nephew being 25 years old, as I just gazed upon them, I felt a sense of giving in. Like, of course, I'm still having my turn, and I don't have any like imminent health scares or anything, but it was almost like this sense of me moving towards death and passing as these kids grow into their generation and their prime. And there was such a deep sense of comfort with that, like I get to be compost for the next generation or something. Now, granted, of course, I'm still young and I've still got business to do, and there's still many things I want to do with my life, and many things that I want to carry on to my children and to my nephews. But this idea of being able to give in a way that I perhaps necessarily couldn't receive from my parents or my aunts and uncles, it just feels so good. And something about it feels so right. It's like a greater flow of love. Not that I'm holding grudges or any negativity about some of the things that I couldn't receive from my parents. For example, my son Isa, in the next 2-3 years, will be looking up and researching and preparing to send his applications towards college. It's a huge decision in his life, and it's a very important time. And I remember that when I was in high school, my parents were freshly divorced from 26 years of marriage, and they were both in a very messy place, and neither of them had any capacity to help support me, not only in selecting the university that I would go to, but even for financial matters as well. So this obviously impacted my decision making and the way that I would lead my life from there on forth. But I'm now able to provide for my son Isa something that I wasn't able to receive. And I think that's a huge testament to love and growth. Again, not to diminish the way that my parents loved me and tried their best, but in a very human way, if we were not loving, if we were perhaps jealous or self-serving or not giving, feeling a sense of separation, it's common to think that you wouldn't want to give something that you weren't able to receive. And yet, that's not at all how love works. The way that love works, you want to give readily, even the things, and perhaps most of all, the things that you weren't able to receive. And I know that's not just me, because I've witnessed it in many of my friends and in my students too. And sometimes, yes, it feels like a tall order to stretch yourself to be able to give what you didn't receive. And yet, every time, should you choose to do so, you may stretch and you may make it happen. And yes, as you allow that choice, as you allow that love to flow through you, it not only serves your children in the next generation, but those choices are the ones that begin to heal you and perhaps the generational trauma that you've carried or represented in your lineage. And I think that's a powerful, powerful way of being. I hope that reaches some of you. And if, I don't know, by any chance, you're in that in-between space of having the choice to give what you didn't get, I believe in you wholly, and I know that you are wonderfully capable of stepping up to the task. Thank you for listening. Learn more about me in my upcoming book, Kizuki, Realizations Beyond Time and Death, at my website, maey.live, or find me on Instagram at maeyoshiKawa.